Penguin Random House Audio presents Good Ideas and Power Moves 10 Lessons for Success from Taylor Swift. This is the author, Sinéad O'Sullivan. I can dedicate this book to none other than the immeasurable number of Swifties who have changed my life by constantly and consistently espousing the power moves I discuss henceforth. In the words of Taylor Allison Swift, this one is about you. You know who you are. I love you. If you're lucky enough to be different, don't ever change. A quote by Taylor Swift. Introduction. This is a book about Taylor Swift, of course. But to really understand what I've written in this book, there are a couple of other things you need to understand first. You, yes, you, can work at NASA. When I was a 15-year-old high schooler, I was given the opportunity to travel from Northern Ireland to Houston's Mission Control on the trip of a lifetime to Space Camp. I had always had an indiscriminate love for all things in the sky: planes, black holes, Mars rovers, astronomy, and more. So when I heard about the opportunity, I applied straight away and, to my surprise, made it through the interviews to get a coveted place. It was next level amazing. When I arrived in Houston, I was picked up at the airport by my host family of NASA engineers who happened to live next door to the Johnson Space Center. In fact, and rather unsurprisingly, during my time at Space Camp, I met person after person who worked at NASA. Like the guy who did the thermal engineering on the astronaut's spacewalk glove, the guy who worked on the new ion thruster propulsion system, the scuba diving woman who trained astronauts in the massive underwater mock-up of the International Space Station. I got to sit in the Mission Control Center and talk to the flight director once he was finished speaking to the astronauts aboard the space station. One of my more daring Space Camp pals managed to bum a cigarette off the college intern who was working on orbital trajectory. In the evenings, we hung out with the kids of the NASA employees and went around to a friend's of my host family's house for dinner. One of them had a swimming pool, and we had a pool party. Me, in America, having a pool party. I felt like I was in a TV show. Once Space Camp sadly concluded, after weeks of sweating in a type of heat and humidity that I had never experienced before, I went back to my home in Northern Ireland just in time to start back at school. A few months later, the time came to start college applications. For me, deciding what to study was the easiest decision I had ever made. I was going to study aerospace engineering so that I could one day work at NASA. So naturally, when my teachers and friends and even friends of my parents asked me what I wanted to do, I told them as much. Their reaction? Oh, sure, okay. I could see in their eyes that what they were really thinking was, this poor delusional girl. I may as well have told them that I wanted to grow up to be the Princess of Genovia. My teachers told me to apply for something else as well, just in case. My friends sometimes asked me, but what do you actually want to do? And my parents assumed I'd grow out of it at some stage. Anyway, that was a million years ago now. I did, in fact, study aerospace engineering in Northern Ireland, and then I moved to the United States to study more aerospace engineering at grad school. I specialized in human spaceflight and got to work with astronauts and mission controllers, and yes, I got to work on designing space missions for NASA. My good friends became the men and women who designed rovers for other planets, and I even got to be in the Mission Control Center at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory when the Mars Curiosity rover touched down on a planet 200 million kilometers away. My friends would talk about their rocket testing in the same way that other people may talk about football results. The reason I bring the story up in a book about Taylor Swift is simple. This book is fundamentally about looking at what Taylor has done and continues to do, and then saying, you too can do this. Which, in theory, and at least to me, sounds perfectly normal. But over the years, I've come to realize that, to so many people, this is something that sounds totally batshit crazy. You think you can be like Taylor Swift? You think you can work at NASA? Unfortunately, a lot of people are absolutely convinced that these types of achievements are beyond the realm of what is possible for mere mortals to achieve. But what if I told you that the people achieving such things are only mere mortals? You see, what I was so incredibly lucky to learn and internalize when I was 15, and the one thing that ultimately had more impact on my life than anything else, can be summarized by one word: agency. It's the idea that we do have control over the outcomes of our life, and in fact, far more control than you may even realize. Agency is the premise that if you want to do something, you can actually just go right ahead and do it without seeking permission or waiting for it to happen to you. If anybody can do anything, then why not me? Or why not you? My preconceptions of NASA were probably similar to what most people think of the place: secretive, full of the world's smartest people and famous astronauts, and totally 100% unachievable as a career choice. But when I actually spent time there as a student, I realized this couldn't have been further from the reality. Sure, everybody was really smart. But aside from the one in every few hundred people who were modern-day Einsteins, most people had gone to college, studied engineering or science, achieved average to good grades, and worked their way into NASA in the same way that you might work your way into any other engineering job. What separated those who worked on space missions instead of designing bridges was not their intelligence, but simply their interest in space missions instead of bridges. NASA engineers were just normal people. They got up in the morning after hitting the snooze button too many times, rolled into work, did some really cool stuff, and then went home again for dinner with the family. If anything, I was slightly disappointed by just how normal, mundane, even the astronauts' lives were. During a recent podcast interview, I was asked the following question: what is it that really separates NASA engineers from normal engineers? My response: NASA engineers are normal engineers. They just work on slightly different things. Astronauts are just regular people, it turns out, with a government job, albeit an extremely cool and prestigious one. And when I shyly told these astronauts to their faces that I, too, would like to be an astronaut, you know what they said? Great, so here's what you need to do. Let me know if you need any help along the way. Once I got home from space camp, I felt like my life had permanently changed. I also felt like I had been lied to my whole life. People pretended that becoming an astronaut was impossible, but it's clearly not. I had met real-life astronauts, and they had told me how I could become one too. What other things were people lying about being impossible to do? On being fearless. 2 weeks after I started my undergraduate engineering course in Northern Ireland, Taylor Swift released her second studio album, Fearless. I sang Love Story with my best friend Kirsty when we won our first-year aircraft design competition. Taylor then released Red when I started learning how to drive, the CD of which was the only one I had in my car as I drove, quite badly, between Belfast and Dublin to visit my first serious boyfriend. My move to the United States coincided with her release of the Welcome to New York anthem on her 1989 album, and I wrote at least 50,000 words of my grad school dissertation on spaceflight listening to Blank Space. I fell in love with a new boyfriend over You Are in Love. In the midst of wildest dreams, I emailed the CEO of a large spaceflight company one day out of the blue to ask her how I could, one day, get her job. And I finally got a response: you need to go and get an MBA. And so, after quickly Googling what an MBA was, a master's in business administration, it turned out, I moved to Boston to start a new era at Harvard Business School. Once there, I parted ways with my previously mentioned boyfriend, rather fittingly to the Reputation soundtrack. However, around that time, I happened to fall in love in my professional life, unexpectedly, with something new: business and finance. I decided not to return to spaceflight at NASA after my MBA, but to remain in Boston at Harvard, researching innovation, ideas, finance, and strategy. As with most of her fans, Taylor Swift has been a massive part of my personal story for as long as I can remember. This boyfriend, that album, this place, that song. Nearly every Swiftie I've ever met is able to write their personal story through Taylor Swift's discography, just like I've done. At Harvard Business School, however, I started to think about Taylor Swift's journey through a professional lens too. Over time, I had become more and more obsessed with the thing I learned.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?